Welcome into Bengals Breakdown by Chat Sports. I am your host, Chris Daughtery. Coming up on today's show, we are breaking down some winners and losers from the Bengals' final preseason game of the season. Obviously, the Colts put the smackdown on them, but, at the end of the day, it was really the second and third string and fourth string guys out there, so not going to get too angry about some of these things. I will say as well, some guys on this winners list, I don't necessarily know if they're going to end up making the Bengals 53-man roster, but I do think they showed a lot of really good things during the preseason. Might go some ways into having them get picked up by some other teams as well. But if you guys are excited for the season to finally start up here, make sure you guys get down there and like today's video for me. If you're excited for week 1 to finally roll around, get down there and like today's video. All right, my first winner for the Cincinnati Bengals in that game yesterday versus the Colts is going to be Kendall Milton. I thought he looked really, really nice during that game. Had 8 carries for 72 yards. Also averaged 9 yards per carry. Wasn't able to get into the end zone, but I thought he looked really, really good for the Bengals yesterday. I think he also offers some special teams, coverage teams value as well. And like I said, I don't know if he's necessarily going to end up making this 53-man roster. You got Chase Brown, Samaje Perine, Taj Brooks we'll talk about here later in just a little bit. I don't think Conley's making this roster. We'll also talk about Gary Brightwell here in a little bit as well. So I think the Bengals are only going to end up taking 3 running backs on this team, but I do think that Gary Brightwell did a really, really good job in that day yesterday, and he looked really, really solid in that game. So let me know down at the pinned comment of today's video. Does Kendall Milton end up making this Bengals 53-man roster? Never know. He might not make it as a running back, but he could make it as a special teams player. So let me know what you guys think down at the pinned comment of today's video. Does Kendall Milton end up making this Bengals 53-man roster? All right, my second winner of the preseason here is going to be Isaiah Thomas, the defensive end. I thought he played really well throughout the entirety of the preseason. He impressed me a lot throughout these 3 games. He is a guy that, it seems like every single time he is in there, I noticed him. I called his name multiple times during our watch parties this year. Against the Colts, 5 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. A couple quarterbacks hits, couple sacks as well. He also had that batted pass that, went up in the air and Howard Cross ended up intercepting, but then, fumbled. Either way, he was creating a lot of pressure for the Bengals this preseason. And, every time he's out there, I end up calling his name, whether he's, just creating some pressure on the quarterback or actually making plays. This defensive end room right now has a lot of bodies in it, so I don't necessarily know if he's going to end up making the roster at one of those defensive end spots, but I was really, really impressed with the way Isaiah Thomas has played during the preseason. My next winner for this game is actually going to be 2 guys that did not even play in this ball game, Mitchell Tinsley and Taj Brooks. Neither one of them played in that game. And that's a good thing. It means that they have done enough now to make this Bengals 53-man roster. It seems like anyways at this point. When you talk about Mitchell Tinsley here, I think that the Bengals are going to end up taking 6 wide receivers. Your 3 starters right there. I think Jermaine Burton still makes this team, Charlie Jones, and then Mitchell Tinsley. See, about Isaiah Williams, I just don't know if there's really going to be a spot for him. Obviously, Jermaine Burton did get a little bit banged up in that game as well, but I still think I would put him over a guy like Isaiah Williams. So Mitchell Tinsley and Taj Brooks not playing in this game this week seems like a really positive things for their future for the Bengals. So who is your biggest winner for the Bengals this preseason? Get down there to the comment section and let me know what you guys think. Who is the biggest winner for the Bengals this preseason? My next winner on this list, another guy that I don't necessarily know if he's going to end up making the roster or not, but man, Muma John Meta went out there again, and I know he played the entire game. That's not always, the best thing in the third preseason game, but he had 12 tackles yesterday, and, the most snaps that this was the most amount of snaps that he played in a preseason game this year. He only played 18 versus Philadelphia and only 9 versus the Washington Commanders. I think this is a guy that, is a pretty sure tackler. He doesn't miss a lot of tackles when he's out there. And while he might not be a legitimate linebacker option for the Bengals this year, last year he played a lot of special teams as well. And, when you're going out there, you're a sure tackler. That could be that can go a very, very long way into making this Bengals 53-man roster, just being able to provide some of that special teams depth. All right, we'll continue on here in just a second, but first, want to give a shout out to our friends over at Prize Picks. Preseason is underway, and college football is also back as well. So don't miss any of the action this season on Prize Picks. I personally use Prize Picks for a bunch of different kinds of sporting events, whether it's college football, baseball, basketball, MMA, whatever it is here. You guys can have a lot of fun on Prize Picks. This is what we cooked up here for our Prize Picks slate this week. Got the freebie there. Dak Prescott, only a half passing yard, going with a more than on that one. And then Xavier Worthy, only 3.5 rushing yards, going with a more than on that as well. And then Ashton Jeanty, going with the more than on only a half touchdown. I think he's going to get his first touchdown in his first game there with the Las Vegas Raiders. Prize Picks is super simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if you get your picks right, you can win up to 2,000 times your money today. Prize Picks also invented the flex play. This right here is a power play. So, you get all of them right. You get more in on your return there. But with the flex play, you can get one wrong and still come out on top. So download the Prize Picks app today and use promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time for you guys, that's promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That link is going to be down in the description of today's video. It's also going to be down at the pinned comment of today's video as well. It's Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, my last winner here for the Bengals preseason is going to be Jalen Rivers in this game yesterday. He started the game at that right guard position, and, there wasn't really a moment in that game where I noticed him in a bad way. With the injuries that you have at that guard spot right now and the uncertainty of, maybe or maybe not signing a guy like Dalton Risner, I thought the way he played went a really, really long way to kind of give me a little bit of a sigh of relief at that right guard spot for the Bengals, and I gained a lot of confidence in him this week. All right, where there are winners, there are also losers here, and, man, Desmond Ridder has got to be the first loser on this list, in my opinion. He was pretty bad for the Bengals yesterday, and, I get it. He's out there with other backups, but you're also playing against backups as well. He only went 8 for 20, 75 yards and an interception. And, he might end up being that emergency third quarterback for the Bengals this year. Last week he was getting some of those quarterback 2 reps, but it's not even a close competition right now between Desmond Ridder and Jake Browning out there. I think the good news for Desmond Ridder, unfortunately, I guess for some other people out there, Peyton Thorne was even worse out there. He went out there and, it seemed like he was just tripping over his own feet, fumbling the ball multiple times, and, he ended up getting it back a couple of times. But, man, Peyton Thorne looked even worse than Desmond Ridder in that game yesterday. So who is your biggest loser of the Bengals preseason? Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section of today's video. My second loser on this list, this is a really interesting one, is going to be McKinnley Jackson. Normally when a guy is, playing in the second half of the third preseason game, it means he's fighting for a roster spot. And that's pretty disappointing considering where you picked him in last year's NFL draft. I thought he played really well versus the Eagles in week 1. It was kind of a non-factor against the Commanders. He played the entire game against the Colts yesterday. And really, did anybody else see him out there really making a massive impact? I still think he ends up making this Bengals 53-man roster. And look, I know it's also the preseason, and you're not going up against the starters, and it's, kind of different situations, some weird things going out there. But I really kind of feel like Howard Cross III has caught my eye more than McKinnley Jackson has so far in the preseason. Not saying that, he's going to end up making the roster over McKinnley Jackson, but, just the fact that he was out there yesterday for as long as he was, that's not a good sign. I don't know if he's in the doghouse or what's going on right now with McKinnley Jackson, but just the fact that he was playing into the fourth quarter during yesterday's game, it's not a good sign at all for McKinnley Jackson. My third loser here today is Jalen Key at that safety spot. And, unfortunately, he has just gotten beat a lot here in the preseason. I don't think he's going to end up making this roster. He had a couple missed tackles. He got beat on that slant route for the touchdown pass there. Dejon Anthony is now dealing with a hamstring injury, but I don't think that's going to end up, helping Jalen Key in any kind of way. I think Dejon Anthony is going to make this roster. I don't think Tyson Anderson played in that game yesterday, so that probably means that he's making the team as well. I thought P.J. Jules actually even had a pretty good game yesterday as well, so I just unfortunately don't see a path for Jalen Key to make this roster. So get down there and make sure you are subscribed right here to Bengals Breakdown by Chat Sports. The Bengals 53-man roster is due by 4 p.m. on Tuesdays, so we'll continue to keep you guys updated on any kind of roster cuts that the Bengals will have over the next couple of days. And once that final roster is set, we will have a video for you guys on Tuesday as well. So don't miss out. Hit that sub button for me right now. All right, my last loser here today. This one does make me really sad to put him on there because I think he's played pretty well in the preseason. Is going to be Gary Brightwell Jr. I just unfortunately don't see a path for him to make this roster right now. Like I said, I really like him. I think he runs the ball really, really hard. And I thought, he did show some nice things, especially in that Eagles game in the return game. But there's just so many guys that, are going to be above him on this roster right now. In the return game, Charlie Jones, Jermaine Burton, maybe even a guy like Isaiah Williams also is going to be back there in the return game. And, the Bengals may only end up taking 3 running backs at the end of the day. And if they take a fourth, I think it's going to be between Gary Brightwell and Kendall Milton. I don't think Conley's going to make this roster, but, I think Gary Brightwell might end up being one of the tougher roster cuts for the Bengals this year.